Hold on. Do not scroll away just yet. Right here in this video, we are about to uncover the fascinating stories behind three specific old coins that most people would completely ignore. If you have a part of loose change, an old inherited coin collection collecting dust in the attic, or even just a handful of pennies sitting in your pocket, you need to stop what you are doing and pay very close attention. At first glance, the coins we are going to talk about today look ordinary, old, worn, and perhaps even entirely worthless. You have probably seen coins exactly like these and spent them at a grocery store, fed them into a parking meter, or dropped them into a tip jar without a second thought. But here is the shocking part that experienced collectors know and everyday people do not. Out of the millions of pennies struck by the United States Mint, a select few have survived decades of history and contain hidden details that can transform a 1-cent piece into a highly sought-after numismatic treasure. Today we are going completely in-depth on three specific Lincoln wheat pennies that have captured the attention of serious collectors all over the world. These are the coins that specialists search for every single day, while ordinary folks accidentally spend them, completely unaware of the history and potential value slipping right through their fingers. Before we dive into the exact details of these three remarkable coins, you need to understand one crucial rule of coin collecting. If you find an old wheat penny, no matter how dirty, dark, spotted, or worn it looks, do not spend it. And whatever you do, never attempt to clean it. The true value of an old copper coin lies in its originality, its history, and the natural aging process it has undergone over many decades. A dark, circulated surface tells a story that collectors respect, while an artificially cleaned or polished coin instantly loses its historical integrity. We are going to examine every microscopic detail of these coins, from the exact weight and metal composition to the subtle die varieties, mint marks, and the historical context that makes them so incredibly desirable. By the time we are finished, you will look at every piece of pocket change in an entirely new way. 1939, Lincoln Wheat Penny. Our journey begins in a year that defined the end of one era and the frightening dawn of another. The year is 1939. The United States was finally beginning to emerge from the crushing weight of the Great Depression. American industries were slowly coming back to life, factories were reopening, and everyday citizens were finally finding their financial footing again. At the same time, the world was watching with bated breath as tensions across Europe reached a boiling point, ultimately erupting into the beginning of World War II. During this incredibly tense and transformative period in global history, everyday commerce in America had to continue. People still needed to buy a loaf of bread, purchase a daily newspaper to read the alarming headlines, or pay for a bus ticket to get to work. To keep the American economy moving, the United States Mint facility in Philadelphia quietly struck millions of Lincoln wheat pennies. No one working the coin presses at that time could have ever imagined that more than 8 decades later, dedicated numismatists would be hunting for the surviving examples of their daily labor. When you hold a 1939 Lincoln wheat penny in your hand, you are holding a direct physical connection to that specific moment in time. Take a very close look at the front of this coin, the side collectors refer to as the obverse. You will immediately recognize the iconic and distinguished portrait of President Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. This brilliant design was originally created by the renowned sculptor Victor David Brenner and was first introduced to the American public in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Above Lincoln's head, curving perfectly along the upper rim, is the national motto, "In God We Trust." To the left side of the portrait, floating in the open field of the coin, is the word liberty. To the right side of Lincoln's chest sits the date, 1939. Now, experienced collectors immediately look for one highly specific detail right below that date. On a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint during this era, you will find absolutely nothing. There is no mint mark. That tiny patch of blank space beneath the 1939 date is not an error or a missing feature. It is the official identifier confirming that this specific penny was born in Philadelphia. That simple absence of a letter is the very first thing an expert verifies when authenticating this issue. Now turn the coin over and examine the reverse. This is the classic design that gave the entire series its legendary nickname, the wheat penny. Two beautifully detailed curving stalks of wheat frame the left and right edges of the coin, serving as a powerful symbol of America's deep agricultural roots and enduring national strength. Arching across the very top of the reverse is the traditional Latin phrase, e pluribus unum, which translates to out of many, one is boldly centered in the middle of the coin are the words 1 cent, and directly below that sits the inscription, United States of America. Even after decades of heavy circulation, the elegant simplicity of this design continues to captivate collectors. But the visual design is only a fraction of the story. The physical construction of the 1939 Lincoln Wheat Penny was engineered with extreme precision. It was manufactured using a traditional bronze alloy consisting of exactly 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This specific metallic blend is what gives the coin its rich, warm, reddish-brown color when it is freshly struck, and allows it to age into deep chocolate and oxidized tones over many years. A genuine, unaltered example of this coin weighs precisely 3.11 grams. It measures exactly 19.05 millimeters in diameter, possesses a thickness of approximately 1.52 millimeters, and features a completely smooth plain edge with no reading or lettering. Experienced collectors do not just assume a coin is genuine, they verify these exact measurements using digital scales and calipers because counterfeiters and altered coins do exist in the marketplace. What truly separates an ordinary 1939 penny from a highly valuable collector's piece is a combination of exceptional preservation and the potential presence of verified mint errors. The vast majority of these coins entered circulation immediately. They spent decades rattling around in pockets, cash registers, and jars, slowly wearing down the fine details of Lincoln's hair and the lines of the wheat stalks. Finding a 1939 wheat penny in a heavily circulated condition, like a fine or very fine grade, is quite common, and these coins hold a modest, sentimental value. However, finding an example that escapes circulation entirely, one that retains its original blazing mint luster and pristine, unblemished surfaces, is an entirely different story. Professional grading services use the internationally recognized Sheldon scale, which grades coins from a low of 1 to a perfect 70 to evaluate these pieces. A 1939 Lincoln Wheat Penny graded at Mint State 67 or Mint State 68 with a full red color designation is an absolute condition rarity. These elite, top-tier survivors can command thousands of dollars at major auction houses simply because so few of them manage to survive the last 80 years without acquiring a single distracting scratch, fingerprint, or carbon spot. Furthermore, specialists heavily scrutinize this specific year for recognized die varieties. The most famous anomaly for this year is the 1939 double die obverse. During the highly complex die-making process, the hub was sometimes slightly misaligned when pressing the design into the working die, creating a distinct, overlapping doubling effect on the lettering. Collectors use magnifying loupes and microscopes to search for this doubling on the words "In God We Trust" and the word "Liberty." If you happen to discover an authenticated 1939 double die, the value of that single coin skyrockets immediately. But you will never find these hidden details if you do not take the time to look closely, or worse, if you destroy the coin's surfaces by cleaning it. Remember, dark toning, dirt, and age spots are acceptable to experts. Harsh chemical dipping and abrasive scrubbing are a death sentence for a coin's numismatic value. 1942, D. Lincoln Wheat Penny. As we move forward in time, the story of the Lincoln Wheat Penny takes a dramatic and intense turn. We now arrive at the year 1942, a time when the entire globe was engulfed in the unimaginable chaos of World War II. Following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor in late 1941, the United States had officially entered the global conflict. The entire nation was mobilizing for war. Factories that once produced consumer goods were rapidly converted to manufacture tanks, aircraft, and munitions. Every available resource was being rationed, scrutinized, and redirected toward the massive military effort. Yet, amidst all this unprecedented national upheaval, the American economy still required small change to function. People at home still needed coins for daily necessities. It is within this frantic, high-pressure environment that the 1942 Lincoln wheat penny was born. The United States Mint facility, located in Denver, Colorado, was tasked with producing an enormous volume of these 1-cent pieces. The pressure on the Denver Mint was staggering. The working dies in the coin presses were slamming into copper planchets at a furious pace, hour after hour, day after day. This incredible production speed often led to die fatigue, slight misalignments, and unique striking characteristics that modern collectors obsess over today. When you hold a 1942 penny, you are literally holding a piece of wartime history struck just 1 year before the United States Mint famously altered the penny's composition entirely to save copper for the war effort, resulting in the iconic 1943 steel cents. Looking at the obverse of the 1942 Lincoln wheat penny, you will find the same classic Victor David Brenner portrait of Abraham Lincoln. The word liberty sits to the left. In God we trust arches across the top, and the date 1942 is boldly positioned on the right. But now you must focus your attention directly below the date. There you will find a small but incredibly significant letter D. This single letter is the mint mark, proudly identifying the coin as a product of the Denver Mint. In the world of numismatics, the mint mark is never just a letter. It is a critical piece of the coin's identity and a major factor in determining its ultimate rarity and value. During the 1900s, mint marks were not incorporated into the master hub. Instead, they were individually punched into the working dies by hand using a mallet and a steel punch. Because human beings perform this task, the exact placement, angle, and depth of the D mint mark can vary slightly from one die to another. This manual punching process is exactly what creates one of the most thrilling aspects of collecting the 1942 D wheat penny, the search for repunched mint marks, commonly referred to by specialists as RPMs. Sometimes the mint employee would strike the punch, realize the letter was too weak or slightly misaligned, and strike it a second time. This created a visible, overlapping secondary letter D, hiding just beneath or beside the primary letter. Advanced collectors spend countless hours poring over 1942 D pennies with high-powered magnification, searching for the telltale signs of a D over D error. Finding a verified repunched mint mark transforms an ordinary wartime penny into a highly prized variety that commands a significant premium in the collector marketplace. The reverse of the coin features the familiar elegant wheat stalks, the 1-cent denomination, and the United States of America inscription. But it is the physical composition that requires careful consideration. Like its predecessors, the 1942 D was struck in the traditional 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc bronze alloy. It carries the exact same specifications: 3.1 grams in weight, 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and a plain edge. However, because copper is a highly reactive metal, the way these wartime pennies aged over the decades varies drastically. Many of them developed deep, dark brown coloration, while others acquired spotty, green oxidation from exposure to moisture and the elements. This brings us to a critical lesson in coin preservation. When the average person finds a 1942 D penny covered in dark brown patina or black carbon spots, their first instinct is to try and make it shiny again. They reach for jewelry cleaner, baking soda, or harsh abrasive cloths, completely unaware that they are actively destroying the coin's value. In the high-end numismatic market, originality is everything. A collector will gladly pay a premium for a coin with honest, untouched, original dark surfaces, but they will completely reject a coin that has been artificially stripped of its history through cleaning. The highest auction prices for the 1942 De Wheat penny belong to those miraculous examples that were somehow pulled from circulation immediately upon release and stored in an optimal, climate-controlled environment for over 80 years. When a professional grading service examines one of these flawless pieces and awards it a grade of Mint State 67 or Mint State 68 with the highly coveted full red designation, the auction room becomes intensely competitive. Bidders understand that they are fighting for a practically non-existent piece of perfection from a year defined by global chaos. These flawless, fiery red copper gems from the Denver Mint have been known to achieve astonishing prices, sometimes reaching into the thousands, simply because preserving a fragile copper coin in that state for so long defies all mathematical odds. 1951. Lincoln Wheat Penny. Our numismatic countdown brings us to the post-war era, a time of massive cultural shifts, economic booming, and a rapidly expanding American middle class. We have arrived at the year 1951. The dark clouds of World War II had passed, but the United States was now heavily engaged in the Korean War. Meanwhile, on the home front, the baby boom was in full swing, television sets were becoming a staple in living rooms across the country, and the demand for circulating coinage was soaring to keep up with the explosive consumer spending. It is within this prosperous and dynamic atmosphere that the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny was produced. While the Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out pennies by the hundreds of millions to feed the hungry economy, the United States Mint facility in San Francisco was operating on a much smaller scale. The San Francisco Mint, famous for producing highly desirable proof coins and smaller runs of circulating issues, struck significantly fewer pennies in 1951 than its eastern counterparts. This lower overall mintage naturally piques the interest of collectors, as the foundational rule of economics, supply and demand, always dictates value. When you hold a 1951 wheat penny, you are holding a coin that was produced in smaller quantities to begin with, making high-quality survivors inherently more difficult to track down. The obverse of the coin retains the stoic, timeless portrait of Abraham Lincoln, surrounded by the words liberty and in God we trust. However, the most critical element of this specific coin is found just below the 1951 date. There, nestled quietly in the copper field, is the elegant little letter S. This S mint mark is the signature of the San Francisco Mint. Much like the Denver coins, the mint marks in San Francisco were also punched by hand into the working dies. This human element once again opens the door for dedicated error hunters. Specialists scrutinized the 1951 pennies for repunched mint marks, searching for an S over S variety, where the letter was struck twice, leaving a doubled image. These subtle variations are invisible to the naked eye of an average person, but under a loupe, they reveal a fascinating story of the minting process and add a thrilling layer of treasure hunting to the hobby. The reverse continues to display the classic wheat ears, e pluribus unum, and the 1-cent denomination. The physical specifications remain locked in, 3.11 grams, 19.05 millimeters, and the standard 95% copper alloy. But the San Francisco Mint during the early 1950s was known for producing coins with very specific striking characteristics. Often, the working dies used in San Francisco were pushed to their absolute limits, sometimes being used long after they had begun to wear down. As a result, many 1951 wheat pennies found in circulation exhibit soft, mushy details, particularly on the higher points of Lincoln's cheekbone, his jawline, and the intricate parallel lines of the wheat stalks on the reverse. A weakly struck coin, even if it has never been circulated, will never achieve the highest grades from professional third-party certifiers. Because of this tendency for softer strikes, finding a 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny that possesses a razor-sharp, fully detailed strike alongside completely pristine, unblemished surfaces is an incredibly daunting task. This is where the intricacies of professional grading come into play. When grading copper coins, experts do not just look at the physical wear, they rigorously evaluate the color. Copper is a highly unstable metal that changes color as it reacts with the environment. Graders classify copper coins into 3 distinct categories: brown, red-brown, and red. A coin designated as brown has fully oxidized and lost its original mint brilliance, taking on a deep, dark color. A red-brown coin retains some of its original luster, but has begun the natural darkening process. However, a coin that receives the full red designation has miraculously retained the fiery, brilliant orange-red luster it possessed the very second it was struck. For the 1951 wheat penny, achieving a high numerical grade like Mint State 67 or Mint State 68, coupled with a full red color designation, and a razor-sharp strike creates a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. These are the specific coins that generate absolute silence in an auction hall, followed by a fierce, determined bidding war. Serious registry set collectors, the individuals who strive to build the absolute finest collections in the world, will happily pay exorbitant sums to secure a flawless 1951S for their portfolio. But these mind-boggling valuations are strictly reserved for the absolute finest known examples. The average circulated 1951S penny that you might find at the bottom of a coffee can is worth only a few cents. Yet, the possibility that a flawless gem or a rare repunched mint mark variety could be hiding in that very same coffee can is exactly what keeps the entire hobby of coin collecting so endlessly addictive and captivating. As we conclude this deep dive into these three historic Lincoln wheat pennies, the most important takeaway is this: you must train your eyes to see what everyone else ignores. The 1939, the 1942D, and the 1951S are not just old pieces of metal. They are tangible, surviving artifacts that have witnessed the end of the Great Depression, the harrowing years of World War II, and the explosive growth of post-war America. Every single scratch, every patch of dark natural toning, and every beautifully preserved detail tells a unique story that can never be replicated. The next time you are handed a handful of loose change at the grocery store, or the next time you decide to sort through that heavy glass jar of coins you inherited from a grandparent, do not simply pass them by. Stop. Take a breath. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark beneath the date. Turn the coin over and examine the wheat ears. Look closely at the color and the condition of the surfaces. Now remember the golden rule of numismatics: absolutely never clean your coins, as the natural aging process is a critical part of their historical identity. Store your intriguing finds properly by holding them only by the edges and placing them in archival safe, non-PVC holders to protect them from moisture and environmental damage. The vast majority of people will walk right past a hidden fortune simply because they do not have the knowledge or the patience to look closer. But you are no longer one of those people. You now possess the insight to look at a dark, dirty, overlooked penny and recognize the incredible history and potentially the immense value resting quietly right in the palm of your hand.